All right, well, good evening, everybody. Let's go ahead and start this special meeting on the 28th of June, 2023 at 6:06 p.m. Roll call, Chair Collins present, Vice Chair Dove,
Present.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Present.
Commissioner Campbell is on excused absence, and Commissioner Davis is on a excused absence. Let's get into our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Really need to invest in a flag in here. Now that we're having we're having three different groups meeting here at this point.
Yeah, the city council decided that they were dropping the Pledge of Allegiance.
They don't do it during study sessions now.
Did we just grab the flag from upstairs by chance or no?
It's locked.
It's locked and the base is kind of janky. So if you touch it, it's like you might not be able to get it back kind of a thing. So I don't,
So they've offered, I think, to order a flag for here, so we just have to follow
Yeah,
up on that.
we can talk to Albert about that. He's back. He's out of town right now.
I'm also open to having a debate with everybody and see if we want to continue it or not. Because if city council's already dropping it on certain things.
So they're dropping it within their study sessions. So they have their legislative sessions up there, but they have their study sessions where we all sit in this area here. So it's a little less formal.
Okay,
But again, this obviously is in the most formal of settings anyway. So it's something that if you want to consider, it's in your purview for sure. So.
okay, well, I'm open for debate. Maybe we'll talk more about that later on in the commissioner reports. Can I get a motion for last week's minutes, or sorry, tonight's agenda?
Move to approve the agenda. Next meeting.
I can get you now, second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then can I get a motion on the minutes from our meeting on the 14th of June?
Move to approve the minutes from June 14th planning commission meeting.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. We don't have any public comment tonight, correct?
No one is here for the public though.
We're not doing any presentations tonight. We don't have any public hearings scheduled for tonight, no action items tonight, which brings us into our workshop and let's discuss 2023 comprehension plan update.
Oh, great. Just first, were there any comments on the first chapters of the comprehensive plan which we went through at the last meeting?
I mean, there's some like little grammatical things.
I agree.
but, Yeah, I found a few. The one
Please
thing,
give it to me.
oh, I didn't even like really keep up with the grammatical stuff. I just figured there was going to be a review process once it got towards the end, but this section right here that's talking about our schools, this idea number 8, it's not mentioning Westwood basically, because Westwood's not in Cheney. So that would need to be mentioned in there.
Not in Cheney proper. And so it's a high school and middle school that are currently in Cheney, that we do have another middle school.
Yeah, we did
Services.
expand. This came up before when we were working on the website. And we did actually add a section here on Westwood,
Remember us doing that?
which is right here. When I took that picture, the parking lot was flooding, so check that. It's pretty cool. But we should probably definitely add that because it is, yeah, impactful.
Other than that, the information all looked good to me, other than like the grammatical errors. I think there was one of the charts in the park section that should have been separated out, but it was combined. Land use. There's this little section right here where it's like it's supposed to be 2 different bullet points, but they got combined somehow.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, I was, yeah.
Right, so. So you gotta, I assumed it was just supposed to be a separate bullet point with the capitalization.
Mhm. Yeah, so for sure, there are a number of grammatical errors, in here and, missing words or, period, dot, within period, or what look like the combining of sentences. So there is a random word in the middle of the sentence that has a capital letter. Also, all of those we'll make sure and go through, and very much thank you for doing that. I have tons of comments myself, and I can go through those with you too, so you can kind of know what they are. But I was really kind of curious as to what your first reads, after the overview last week had been.
Really, I think it's good. The one that I did find aside from the school one is under land use on public open space. It was talking about developing a new city hall campus in downtown Airway Heights.
Yeah,
Isn't that area not really considered the downtown?
it's at the edge of the transition area in the downtown plan.
Okay.
So it's the transition from the downtown to the commercial zone. So
Okay, it's just,
we'll make sure and have them change that.
yeah, it's just the wording kind of is like.
Yeah.
Down, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Other than that, in the school, I think everything else I have is all. Too.
And I apologize. I did not review that because of this situation that happened with my stepson. And so my mind was in other places. And so
Okay.
I asked that, and I don't know if this is the right time. I just wanted to say, thank you for letting me have that time. That was it's just difficult time. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully you got to resolve some stuff, and I know there's a lot more precedent things out there than what we're doing here. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just trying to work with my daughter who's dealing with the loss of that, her brother and all of that. And so that's getting her into counseling and
Mhm.
dealing with all of that. So
Mhm.
sorry for interrupting this section, but I just wanted to say that.
No, absolutely. Life keeps rolling and we appreciate that this takes from that. And, obviously your life needs to take precedence.
and to be fair, she gave us that assignment at the very end last time, so I don't think we knew prior to that to do this.
Oh, no, yeah, he wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I'll just kind of jump into this in summary. So obviously I had a lot more comments and we're meeting with the consultant tomorrow. And one of the things that we're going to talk to them about is that we're not going to be bringing any drafts until we have time to review them before they get to you, which because of the timeline, we were receiving them the night before they had to go out in the packets. So I would just put a pause on whether we have another meeting in 2 weeks until we have that meeting tomorrow. And we are going to find out whether they can accommodate the corrections and changes and let us have a chance to review these.
Well, we're going to meet in 2 weeks regardless, though.
Yeah.
Yes, so it would be
Okay.
a supplemental meeting in July. I apologize.
So that would be the 26th.
26, yeah. And what will happen is when we give back these comments, it's going to change all the chapters because one of the patterns in the document is similar to our 2020 comp plan, where the same goals and policies are restated in each chapter. And then they have the little key code saying this applies to these 3 chapters of the comp plan. So an error in one chapter gets repeated over and over and over again. An omission in one chapter gets repeated over and over again. The second thing that I noticed was that in this document, which is considered volume 1, which is the public version, the version that people are going to go to, it's the short, easy to read, get to the point part of the comp plan. And this will also be what the online website will be based on. So we're going to be one of the first communities in the state to have an online web-based comp plan. So it's going to be, it's like entering a website. Like you don't have to get a PDF that's 110 pages and scroll through it. Like you can go in and there will be a tab that says transportation and you'll go into transportation and then you'll be able to see the 6-year tip, or you'll be able to see the map of the sidewalk infill projects, and you'll see a map of the proposed STA expansion route. So it'll just be easier to use. What generally I found was that they were not bringing in the strategies that were in the previously adopted plans consistently. And that was one of the things that was in the RFP, request for proposals for hiring, was that this was part of the scope. So previous to this activity to update the plan, we had adopted a first and our only downtown plan, and it has some really great strategies, which are things that we're supposed to do in order to help implement it. And that's getting lost because they're not bringing it forward into the land use chapter or the transportation chapter. So for example, the downtown plan has some very specific language about how to address businesses in the downtown as being a key to an economic development strategy. We haven't seen the economic development chapter yet. That's when we're going to get, but like that strategy needs to be in the plan. It can't be hidden in volume 2, page 75, because nobody's going to see it, right? Okay. So I just made some comments. I'll circulate this if you guys want to take a look at it. Images are grainy. The sentences don't make sense. Grammar, capitalization. Let's see. Let's kind of get more to the meat of the policy stuff that I've commented on. I wanted them to flesh out more of what our public engagement process has been up to this point, because we've invested a lot of time and money in that, and having a half of the sentence that references a highway plan, which had nothing to do with the development of this plan from back in 2017. Yeah. So we need for people to see, more about, hey, going to Airway Heights days, sending out postcards, 6 months in advance that gave all the dates of our events, the Facebook Live and the Zoom Live. We called it, what was that game show? Hollywood Squares. Like, so we had, tiles of, all these experts there to answer people's questions, and surveys we did about the 3 alternatives and surveys we did about transportation. Like, this all needs to be in here. Okay. Let's see. The other piece that I looked at more specifically, because this was a Bill question. Bill had asked, well, where are these from? For the most part, all the policies are carried forward from the 2020 plan, but where we had recommendations from the newly adopted plans on a specific policy, like the downtown plan or the industrial sub-area plan or the art plan, the goal is to bring forward those policies, which I'm still not seeing, so we need to get them in here, was to also understand what may be different. So in policy 1, for example, they added several different sections of new language, and again, they're kind of not well written. So I'm going to comment on that. So they said support a walkable and bikeable city. Like, okay, what does that mean as a policy? Like, what does that mean? They had one that I know came from a transportation consultant, and it reads exactly like that. Promote connectivity between developments on a network of scale planned consistent with city access fees and guidelines provided in section 2E of the transportation section of the design standards. Like, nobody knows what that means.
Right. Layman's terms.
Yeah. So those are kind of my comments. Like, if you're going to pull something from a recommendation from a consultant, great, then let's make it into people speak instead of engineer speak, and let's make it a little bit easier. They put a narrative under policy 3, which is having to do with concurrency. Concurrency means that you either have the money to build the infrastructure you need in tandem with the new development, or the infrastructure is actually built. So the money to build it, or they build it themselves. And so they put in these 2 paragraphs that, like, nobody's gonna understand. Mobility performances are guided by city intersections and street LOS standards. Mobility performance is guided by the city of intersection street LOS standards. So it's a duplicate sentence. The city maintains a level of service D for signalized and stop controlled, unsignalized intersections. Like it goes on and on like. Or a volume to capacity ratio of 0.90 or better for approaches, like he's gonna care. So if that's okay with you, I'm gonna be giving all of these as comments to the consultant. So when we see an updated draft of this, you will see that. And we're also gonna stop the madness and get them to clean up the document before we see new chapters.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I honestly was just looking for things that I knew were wrong, not the grammar and stuff like that. So
I did want to dig a little bit into the housing chapter, just a little bit to make sure we're going in the right direction. So in the plan, it still identifies the 3 categories, which were low density, medium density, and high density. And low density was up to 5 units per acre, medium was up to 10, high density was 10 to 20. And then they need to add mixed use because along US 2, we allow mixed use, which is live work. So you have an office retail below multifamily, and it's combined into one building, right? So they need to add that density in here. But in general, one of the things we talked about, and I'm on page 35.
Sorry, the pages are different because
It's on the bottom right hand side of each page.
oh, there we go.
There you go. Should we, in the land use chapter related to housing, should we consider merging the low density and the medium density category? There you go. A little bit further down. There you go. So that it would allow for any areas that are basically residential could go up to 10 units per acre. Now they list it as a strategy to do that through zoning. But I think we need to talk about it in the comp plan if it's something we want to implement. And just a reminder, I'll put a little map out. This is the proposed land use map. And the M&Ms are there for everybody. And particularly we have a winner chocolate dinner there for you for answering the question previously with regards to the comp plan.
Better eat those M&Ms.
We didn't give them away last meeting. I have a hard time. So the light yellow is the low density residential, and as you can see, it covers the majority of the city. Now, this is not yellow, and this is something we're gonna have to get them to change because you can't tell that this tribe property is not residential because it's kind of close to yellow. But basically the super pale color, which is still wrong on this map. They still have the APZ area as residential.
Where? No, yeah, that's
Okay, we're at the map again. That would be 5 units to the acre. So what does a 5 unit look like? It looks like a fairly medium-sized lot. So it's probably 7,000, maybe a little over 7,000 square foot.
yeah. Our minimum for our low density is 7,200 square feet. Right?
Mhm.
So that's what you see typically when you see a single family house in Airway.
Our medium density residential, which is implemented at 6,000 square foot lots.
So these are, so our R2 zones, our medium density or duplexes. We don't really have any other medium density housing types in the city right now, but that's what you're looking at.
So essentially at 10 units per acre, if we applied it across the city and then we talked about what kind of units could go in there, it could be townhomes or row houses. They could be side by side or up and down duplexes. And they could even be triplexes.
Or it could be a single family with an ADU. And so one of the comments I'm gonna have is they need to update the graphics in this to show the various kinds of housing that would be possible. So does everybody know what an accessory dwelling unit is?
Mhm.
So accessory dwelling units can be internal or they can be external. So it can look just like a single family residence, except it has a different entrance somewhere else
Right.
on the property. But it would allow up to 10 units per acre. And so I think this is one of the critical pieces, is whether or not the planning commission would support the idea of merging those two land use categories. And what it would do is there still could be in a zoning application a variety of lot sizes and unit types allowed. But it would make it a lot more flexible. Now, one of the reasons that this could be a good suggestion is because of that state law that we talked about, which I think is called, is it engrossed substitute House Bill
HB 110.
HB 110, which was passed this year by the state legislature, that will require us by the end of 2026, beginning of 2027, to have regulations that allow 2 units on every lot. Every lot that residential zoning is allowed on.
It makes sense to me, Heather, to just be preemptive and do that anyhow, because it's a
Okay.
need of the city and we're gonna have to do something by 2026 anyhow, so we might as well just be preemptive and get there beforehand.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to re-go through that with you, so that we have some more specific language added to this chapter. And then I think updating the images, especially with the ADU.
I don't think we have any AVU images in.
They don't have any ADU and they don't have any, well, they do, so they say shoreline, but this is really a cottage housing
Mm.
project. So cottage housing has been really popular more on the coast. I think there's 2 now in Spokane. Basically they're smaller single family homes that are either on a common piece of property, or they are smaller lots that then have shared common open space around them. And they're intended as a product for a variety of income levels.
Mhm.
So you could be an owner or renter, you could be low income, you could be retiree. But the goal is to have a smaller footprint and common open space rather than large individual lots. So we'll ask for updates on the images there. The other issue that came up was we've talked a lot about the high density, the 10 to 20 in the plan. And one of the things I'm hearing from the city council is, at least not all of them, some of the city council members, that they don't want to see large scale apartment buildings any longer in the city. That's not really an issue because there's no high density residential land left. The map that we're working off of isn't proposing any new high density. It's all medium.
Yeah, they're down here
density.
somewhere.
You just found it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, did I have them?
Yeah.
Is it this right here?
No. Oh, look at this.
What are you looking for?
There's some cottage
Okay.
houses
You're right. That's
right here.
nope. Go back across.
In the middle.
Bunch, right there.
These, okay.
That's one of them.
Yeah, there are some cottage housings over in Indian Trail, and I was trying to get there, but I couldn't find it.
You're
And-
trying to drive?
Yeah, and these aren't great pictures because they're so set back from the road here. But this is a development over in Indian Trail that has some cottage housing.
Mm. Mhm.
Can you do the overhead view again?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let you drive anymore.
By the way, this mouse is, I'm blaming the tourist. But yeah, these are.
So in this instance, and this is so that's the whole thing is the cottage housing. So this is basically, and it's a private drive and it's almost what we would call alley access. So it's rear loading for garages. It's not typical in a cottage housing development to have garages actually.
Mm.
We've been seeing that more and more, and particularly because we're in snow country where people want to have a covered area for their car. But there is open space in in case they've chosen to do it all at the front of the building. So it's a single combined front yard in both instances. The examples we more often see is that the common space is internal to the development. So it's around its own little park or garden
courtyard, right?
space. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, there's a really good example of that in Kendall Yards. They have some, sorry. I don't know why I'm driving and doing all this when we should be doing other things, but there are.
We'll get to multifamily eventually, but I promised I'm gonna keep everybody on
Right
a
here.
tight schedule and get out of here on time.
So that's some shared, there's actually a community garden here too.
Yeah, it's a really good example. So
Kind of see here how, well, I guess these aren't built yet in this picture, but these houses face inward. There's a community garden and then some open space, and now there's a second row of housing kind of facing them. So it all faces into to the inside of that.
Mhm.
smaller footprint for the building. It is requiring, and this is pretty true of all of Kendall Yards, is they do private driver alley loading
As you can kind of
so that you don't have all these driveway drops onto the street, and it creates connection between the street and the residential use.
Sorry, we can get back to it.
Okay, thank you. So for the multifamily, so we're keeping a high density category of 10 to 20. But we're not designating any property as high density residential. I mean, as a comp plan, it is, well, we are actually, I'll take that back. And you can barely see it, but the downtown plan was adopted with redesignating these 3 blocks, 1 block back from US 2 and up alongside Sunset Elementary as going to high density residential. So right now it's a series of single family manufactured home and vacant lots in that area.
Mhm.
So it would require a significant effort for somebody to acquire that property and do it, but it is possible. But one of the dilemmas is the concern that some of the council members have expressed about having large unit multifamily in the community. We all need to have housing options, but any thoughts about how to kind of address the need for units and for buildings in general?
Like I say this every time we talk about it. We have a need here for those type of things because that's the people that work here. It's the jobs we have here. And then to price people out of their working communities is not right. So I don't know. To me, it just always rubs me the wrong way whenever I hear the not having these in Airway Heights anymore. I understand if our land use doesn't allow for it, but I think it should always be a possibility as long as land use is allowing for that.
We do have the zoning for it. We just presently don't have any properties zoned for it. Now with this plan
That
going,
developed.
with this plan going forward and keeping that proposal for high density off of US 2, it will make an opportunity for someone to acquire it and to develop high density residential in some combination that looks like these pictures. It could be, fourplex, it could be apartments, they could be townhomes.
I think the Air Force likes to always talk about, well, if we get bracked, then we're gone, and well, they're gone. Then we don't have to worry about these overlay and these sound contours. We don't have to worry about APC anymore. And that leaves a lot of real estate down south of 2 that could be turned into these multifamily housing units. That if we make it so it's now you can't, then it's just not there anymore and you're having to take an action later on down the line.
Yep. Okay. Other thoughts?
So So the Air Force, what, can you restate what you said about the Air Force's position?
So south of Highway 2, you have the APZ, the crash landing zone, whatever you want to call it. And then you have these sound contours. I know what you're on right now, Zach. Nice. But
I like
you're-
them.
so like if you go down Lawson, you'll see the mobile home parks there. There's a little apartment complex right as well on Lawson
Mhm.
that some of it's okay, but some of it's not.
Right.
So over time, they're going to have to take those out. And it has to do with the sound contours that the city of Airway Heights and the Air Force agreed on.
Mhm.
JLIS, what was his name? JLIS?
Mhm. Yeah.
And years ago.
Mhm.
So it's just changing where residential can be south of Highway 2. Basically, all residential south of Highway 2 is going to be discontinued.
Mhm.
But if we don't have the Air Force anymore, which they bring up every time we talk with them, that you don't know if it's going to be there or not. They may lose their tanker contract. They may not have anything to fly there, and they'll close that base down. We don't have to worry about this APZ zone.
Well, and this is designed to protect Fairchild,
Sure.
to avoid that.
Right.
So this is, I think the initial agreement between Fairchild and the city of Airway Heights went into place in like 1995
Mhm.
and has been re-upped and amended. The last time we looked at was 2012,
2018.
18. Oh, yeah, because that was the law, yeah. So the JLIS contours were established in 2012, then 2018. So this is a longstanding policy with Airway Heights. There's another line here. It's a little less subtle, but this blue line,
Mhm.
this is another overlay zone, but it pertains to Spokane International Airport.
Mhm.
So everything in that also has some restrictions, but basically anything in any of the green or the orange residential land use, new residential land uses are not allowed in, right? So it's pretty impactful.
Yeah, and so my thought in that is that, when you think, because I was in the Air Force and when they used to talk about base closures and things like that, one of the things that they communicated was that they would never shut Fairchild down because of its being a refueling cargo type of environment. And if you shut that down, then you have nothing else that would be able to do that. So they always threaten that, but and I was hearing that back when I went in 94, that they would, when they started shutting down bases, that they would not shut down Fairchild because of its proximity to be able to get out to the Pacific and all that other stuff in a timely fashion. So they always may, oh yeah, if they shut us down, then you won't have anything. Well, they're not going to do that. They would kick themselves in the foot because we're not going to have anybody to get off in case we're under attack and all this other stuff. So I just look at that as, if we did lose Fairchild, number one, then what does that do to the economics of the city? How much money are they bringing into the city of Airway Heights? And if we lose that chunk of money, where are we going to recoup that at? Do we have and then our population decreases and all of that other stuff, but where do we have the infrastructure set to?
Well, it's not just Airway Heights. Fairchild Air Force Base is the largest employer in the region.
Right.
So it wouldn't just, impact Fairchild, it would impact, or excuse me, Airway, it would impact everyone, but I don't know, there's constantly conversations about, maintaining and protecting the base. That's kind of how we focus on. We do have conversations about bragging and stuff like that, but I try to stay in my lane and stuff. So,
Right.
we do a lot. I'll say that as a city, into what we allow and what we don't allow, and conversations that we have, we do a lot. We do our part to protect Fairchild. So, but Mark is right. If these go away, it's gonna reshape everything. But you also need to take the other side of the coin.
Right.
Is that the economic and social impact of that happening is also going to reshape
Right.
everything. So, whole new boat.
It's interesting.
I mean, it definitely have an impact if Fairchild were to ever close down. I just want to think practically about the future. Because
Sure.
if it does, I would rather, I know Airway Heights, well, prior to COVID, Airway Heights' main employer was service industry jobs.
Right.
So they're priced out,
Yeah.
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 And it would be nice to have more people living here. I mean, I just feel like people are happier when they get to live where they work.
Right. And I agree with you when you're pricing people out and they can't, that makes for a very bad situation. And so it's in our best interest to make sure that you can have homes that are commensurate with what you're getting paid as an individual, and you don't have to be mortgage poor. You don't have to go through all of that. And I think it would be better if we could really get people to own their homes, to be homeowners. It just, and for some reason I'm reminded of It's a Wonderful Life and George Bailey. I think I brought this up before. When he built those small little cottage homes for those individuals to help get them out of the rat race of being mortgage poor, and they could afford it and they were productive. Sometimes we have to look at that, but that is contingent upon the developers and what they're doing. But we can't continue to price people out of their homes. It's gonna be sad.
Don't disagree whatsoever. I feel like the Kalispell tribe, is building all these apartment complex and these smaller areas to live because they know what people can afford that live here,
Right.
and they need people to work at that casino. So they're making that for them. There's no reason why the city itself shouldn't be doing this as well. It's just always going to be my thoughts, Heather, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate that, agree with that. And part of the reason is that the idea behind missing middle is housing choice. Like, everybody has a choice of where they live. They aren't required to move out of a community because there's a lack of choice, right? And then there's the equity issue that we're talking about, and all different levels for people to have access to housing. And thirdly is on the heels of finishing this plan in 2024, we will be getting a new state required comp plan that has a heavy lift with regards to the housing chapter. And in that one, we will actually be allocated housing. We will actually, in the next couple of months, get our housing number allocation from the county, because it's been issued by the state. And we will have to do our homework, show on paper how we're going to create the opportunity to house all of those people in all the income brackets that they've identified that those housing units are going to be in. And that will go not just from high end, but it will go all the way to homelessness.
Yeah.
So some of these may require us to work on a more regional strategy. So it's going to be a big lift for us to go through that. And so, having options on the table to help us get there doesn't mean we build it. It means we have to create the opportunity for it to happen.
Mhm.
And then we have to do a report card. This is what the new law requires. We're gonna have to do a report card at 5 years, I think.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have to show whether we've been successful because of the way we changed not only the comp plan, we have to change the zoning code. And we have to show that we did this, remove barriers. We have to do a report card 5 years out and say whether it worked or not.
That's going to be interesting to see play out.
It will. So there's no intent to bring this plan to that point of complying with those new requirements, but I think helping us a little edge toward that a little bit will help us, because it's still a couple of years before we're going to have that plan done, and all that work with the updated zoning won't happen until 2027. And so with 4 years, there's some opportunities to get housing for people in the interim and be a little bit more in compliance.
Nice.
Okay, so those were really all the questions I had on the housing section. I'll follow up with a consultant about the maps, the images, the policies, the strategies, and we'll get those over to them for comment. So we were going to go over the next couple of chapters, and we're still at 6:45, so we're doing good on time. In this case, you received 3 chapters. You received the parks plan, the transportation, and the utilities. In a nutshell, the city of Airway Heights did update its park master plan, which is required to have by state law recently, as in, I believe it was 2022. And so a lot of these numbers were updated in the park system overview. The performance metrics were relatively unchanged with regards to what the goals were. These were taken from national goals with how many acres per thousand people that should be provided for a park. And what we see, looking at page 55 of the draft, is that Airway Heights is operating at a deficit of park area for the community. While we do have 33 acres of developed land, we have another 50 acres of undeveloped. That all of that 50 acres is immediately adjacent to the rec center. We do have Sunset, Shorty Combs, Cleveland, Landers, Traditions, and the rec complex, but we are already at a deficit using those levels of service in acres. And as time goes by, for the duration of this plan, it indicates that without adding to our park system, we will continue to increase in population over 20 years, and we will be at a deficit, increasing deficit on the number of acres that we need to serve our community. The current process to acquire parkland and to develop parkland are twofold. One is that unfortunately, the only mechanism we have to require parkland is when a plan unit development is utilized. But as an option that developers can take advantage of, but only when they want to modify underlying zoning. And consequently, we never see PUDs. So we are not getting new parkland with new development, with the exception of Highland Village, which provided only 3/4 of an acre. They did not, as I understand, provide the amount of acreage that would have normally been obtained through PUD for development of that size. But nonetheless, the city accepted that 3/4 of an acre. It will be developed with recreational equipment. And it's that L-shaped, reverse L-shaped property. The other way that currently the city has the ability to develop park facilities is through park impact fee. We're the only community in Spokane County that has a park impact fee. It is based on the number of units and the type of units, and that money is used to develop recreational facilities, and it can be used to purchase parkland. We did purchase a piece of parkland on the east side of the Walmart.
See if I can remember if it's that one.
So we own that piece of property. The intent behind that purchase was to make it into a park. It has received resistance from the community to develop a park there because there have been issues with homelessness in and around that piece of property.
There's
Park impact fees are collected. They can be used to buy equipment, to build ball fields. It could be used to expand the recreation center. It could be used to expand the ball fields at the recreation center. All residential development pays an impact fee. The carrot in this process for park impact fees is that a developer on a new subdivision or an apartment building could ask for a reduction or an elimination of the park impact fee if they provided their own park facility, which is open to the public, but they have to go through the park board to make that request. So I don't know what the park impact fees are right now. They're in the $1,000 to $2,000 per unit range, I think.
It might be more than that.
Could be more than that. But those are the two ways that parks could be developed currently with city with fees and through the process. There obviously are requirements in a park plan to be accessible for all members of the public. There are needs with those parks in order to make them fully accessible and serviceable. And to remove barriers, programming is an important part as well of parks. So some of the highlights of the master park plan got pulled forward into into this draft. I'm going to skip over the policies that are repetitive, the communities and housing chapter. And we'll jump down to, I just saw on here. It was.
Spoiler alert, this park stuff's gonna come up again, maybe in the first week of July.
So in reference to that lot that we own by Walmart, I mean, you don't see a lot of homeless activity in that area, but on 12th, I mean, you have that housing complex over there. It would be a nice place to put a park for people to engage. I mean, didn't Spokane just they're just talking about for people something about requiring homeless people not to camp in parks and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that we could implement here in terms of if people are violating the after hour policy and all of that other stuff? Couldn't we implement something like that?
The city could,
Or-
yeah. I think there already are use hours associated with the park, and I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess, but it probably has something to do with, until dusk or something.
Well,
like that.
Sure.
and what happened in Spokane is there are use hours in Spokane as
Sure.
well, but they upgraded the penalty for being in the park after dark. So it was already
Okay.
an issue, but now it's something you can get like arrested. I think they updated to a misdemeanor.
Yeah. I
So
remember.
it was like a
hearing
civil
that.
fine versus a misdemeanor kind of thing. So I don't know what our policies are. I'd have to check with our.
I think there's simple
Yeah,
rules. The issues around the homelessness was camping on the property, but a lot of it had to do more with vehicles parking on the street being used as residences.
yeah, especially
Right.
during the pandemic, there was a plethora of cars parking along 12th Avenue.
Right.
And camping, and that the citizens of Sakani actually came to the city council and had asked them to do some stuff there. There's also, and I'm not the expert on this, but this parcel in particular,
Mhm.
I know that there were some technical issues with drainage and stuff like that were barriers to developing it. So
I think they just wanted to surplus the property.
that too.
It was actually for sale and under contract. And then.
And then the city pulled out, yeah.
The city pulled out.
Yeah.
So they're just doing
It was last year, yeah, 2022. So I'm not, so it can pan out. Will this show green for parks? Is there parks layer?
Under zone, yeah. It'll be open space.
Yeah, the dilemma, I think, is that in the parks plan talks about being within a half mile or 10-minute walk. Normally, a 10-minute walk is a quarter mile, so I'm not sure why they have a half mile in the master plan. Goal for a service area for the community with a parks facility. And when you look at residential, and you can see the little Highland L up there, you can see Landreth down to the left, Sunset. There's two up in the
Traditions in Cleveland,
in Cleveland up there.
and then there's Shorty Cone.
And then there's Shorty Combs down below. But some of the spaces are a real push to be a 10-minute walk in order to get to park facilities. So when we look at like these policies and the comp plan draft, 49 talks about civic space. 50 more specifically talks about year-round recreation facilities. One of the strategies is to develop passive and active recreational, looking at pocket parks, many exercise areas and trails. This is a strategy that planning is actually recommended, which is we need to maybe consider beyond just a giant 10-acre, 50-acre piece, that there's lots of recreational opportunities that could be developed in much smaller space and have more frequency of recreational opportunities in the community.
That multi-use path that's going along Highway 2 right now,
Mhm.
if you were to put like those exercise equipment along it, does it now qualify for that?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. In California, when I was there, they had a path like that. It just went around an area, and so you could do little exercise things, and it just helps the mobility, and it helps mobility. It helps people getting involved, kids getting involved, all of that. It really would be something nice to do if we could do that, to have that space, that trail. You could run the trail, or you could use that exercise equipment along the way, and helps keep you in shape. And
Yeah,
So-
yeah, exactly.
I think you could also bring in the arts plan for the city, because some of that can be art,
Mhm. Yeah. So strategies and actions like this are items that staff has recommended from planning, seeing them in other plans. So, and the action, develop a senior disability recreation plan for inclusive facilities. Parks Department indicates they have an ADA plan that's very similar to that. But this idea of equity, with regards to recreational facilities and thinking more strongly about having opportunities. I would go further, and I would actually recommend as a policy, or part of, probably policy 50 is to actually start requiring every development to include some element of recreation, not open space, because we see that kind of language in like our multifamily design standards, like you have to have open space, but it only needs to be 10 by 10. They're really talking about a balcony on an apartment building.
wow.
But that we, in particular, when we look at new development, whether it is a cottage housing complex like you saw an example of, or it's a new subdivision, or it's an apartment building, that there is an inherent requirement to participate in some way in a public system.
Would they like burden the cost of that, or would that be part of the park fee?
They would be burdened with the cost of developing it, but in exchange for that, they would get a reduction or elimination in the park impact fee.
Would it be the equivalent, like dollar for dollar? Because going back to our conversation last time, that's just going to add something else to these developers and stuff. If they're not getting a dollar for dollar exchange.
The last one that we looked at was the Highland Village, and the value of the land combined with buying the age appropriate equipment and building the facility was pretty close to what they were going to have to pay in impact fees. So it's very, very, very expensive to develop park space. Anyway, that would be just one thing for consideration. If you were supportive of that, we would have the consultant add some stronger language about basically development participating directly with the network of park facilities. And the reason I say that is when we review a development proposal, or we go to develop a new zoning standard, we derive that from the policies on a comp plan. We don't make stuff up most of the time.
Well,
I mean, I think it would make sense to add it in other.
Okay.
yeah, I agree.
So, these policies kind of going from this point on, are really from the park master plan, which is coordination with other county and agency facilities with the school district. This is a one that I would just warn about, which is that school facilities are not accessible during school periods. They're not accessible to the public for other purposes during school events. So depending on the facility that you have, it's not really open for recreational purposes. For the public. And we do see where having organized recreational activities are limited because of coordination and costs with the school, and more school complexes are not necessarily open, like not like a public park. So I think that it's an interesting idea to coordinate to maximize the opportunities with the Cheney School District, but I just kind of want to benchmark that with reality, and I'm looking at 51. You know, obviously having safe parks is an important element. I'm really kind of just focusing on the ones that they pulled from the park master plan. The other ones are the same regurgitated policies, and some of them shouldn't be in here, which I'll talk to the consultant about. Like guidelines for annexation probably shouldn't be in here. So we'll help with that. Okay, any questions about the park piece?
I don't have questions with the parks piece per se, but is it possible to allow property owners to designate a part of their property that can become a public use property? And then somehow get some type of credit back to them for that?
Well, the first part would be someone can always dedicate land to the city, because if that would be the requirement, is dedicated to the city for public purpose. And then essentially it becomes available for the public, and then it's under the city's liability insurance and so forth. The piece that could happen directly would be a tax benefit to the property owner for that dedication, that donation. As far as another benefit, can you kind of identify what you're thinking?
Well, I'm just going back to that map we were looking at earlier, showing Don when Don was looking at his house and stuff, and you have some of these lots there that have acreage that faces something, or not acreage, but land that's facing a multi-use path that's going through. And, you know, I'm not saying you do, Don, but just throwing it out there as an example. If you wanted to donate that space in front of your house now, because, well, people are going to be going by it anyhow, there's open land there, and you can somehow get a credit back to you that, I don't know, lowers your tax obligation.
Early, look at the orchard.
Yeah. The way Zach just stated, like, how many of this?
I don't even know if it's on here.
It's right there. It's the big rectangle.
Right here.
So in this development, Arrowleaf created a community garden and orchard area, and it's for the residents. So in this example, where what if they dedicated the land to the city of Airway Heights, and there's an access point right there off of Second Avenue, and dedicated it as a public space or as parkland. The most direct benefit immediately would have been a review of the park impact fees that would have been required to be paid for the property. So they could have reduced or maybe eliminated those park impact fees. This is already a low income project, so I'm not sure that they'd be looking for a tax benefit in this case, because it's actually a tax credit project. But you know, other benefits could be that they have maintenance of the facility there, you know, maintenance costs, paying for irrigation, so ongoing costs for the property, you know, could be a benefit to the property owner that it's no longer theirs to take care of. The great part is in a part of the city that needs additional park space. If you want to pan back out, you can see Landers Park is cleared in the south of this. And I'm not in any way suggesting that the owner is proposing to make that into a piece of parkland. But that would be an example where something is big enough that it potentially could be an opportunity for park, and what could we do to, or what could we offer to a property owner? Maybe use your question that would incentivize that.
We have a huge deficit, right? So
Mhm.
there's not that much land we're gonna get it from.
Yeah.
That just makes sense to me.
It only counts if it's dedicated, the city owns it, so somebody would have to get it, because you couldn't take like an apartment building and do a corner, because then it's gotta be available to all the public, so.
So you can't see it in here, but Skyview Apartments is being built right now. And they're putting a pool in the middle. That won't be a fenced park. So that won't be open to the public.
Right here.
It will only,
This is a
it
community building
it
here.
will only benefit the residents.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So-
I live
Are
with
they at least doing an agreement with the fire department in case they ever need the water, that they can come get the water?
No, as a
permit?
matter of fact, they don't even know how they're gonna get rid of the water.
That's a whole other boat.
That's another boat. They want to throw it in the landscaping, and we're just staying quiet because
Not our. field.
there, it would require a whole filtration system just to take the chlorine out, because otherwise it will just kill everything.
Yeah.
And the sewer treatment plant doesn't want it because it'll kill all the good bacteria. Because that's what the chlorine's for, right? So that's an example where, they're making amenities for their residents, and it'll never be available to the public. And rightfully probably so. I mean, the liability as a
Yeah.
property owner to open up a pool to everybody is greater than
Yeah, you don't want to take that risk.
Scott River Landing.
Yeah, they have a saltwater pool in there, and I believe there's one in Cedar as well.
Well, I'm gonna keep us moving along so we can get you guys out of here. And I've noticed that sugar is now being taken in.
Yes.
Hit that.
I will talk with more emphasis and
Nice.
make it more exciting. Okay, transportation. Probably the big pieces of this chapter, which starts on page 66 there, is that a transportation chapter has a couple minimum requirements. Like, you're supposed to say what your roadway classifications are now and what they're gonna be, which is really the map on page 67 and 68. And why is that so important? It is important because we know what we're going to be doing with the road in the future and how it connects to a network. So who's familiar with the hierarchy of roads?
So like interstate, state highway.
Local access,
Yeah.
collector, and arterial.
Yeah, I've never heard that hierarchy of roads. This is the first.
Think of it like a tree. It's very similar to a tree or a root system of a plant. So local access streets are the roots of a tree or a plant. So everything coming off of a piece of property connects to a local access street first. So in a residential setting, if you go to page 67, you can see all of the green lines, those faint green lines. Those are all local access streets. They will always remain local access streets because they're feeders for all of the parcels of land. So houses and shops and businesses have driveways, and they're collecting like the nutrients in the water. They're collecting all that traffic, right? That's their goal. That's their purpose. Then as these vehicles are beginning to start to go somewhere, and that somewhere is a destination, you need to have it funnel into a system that's going to be the most efficient to take all those little local access streets from collection point to a distribution point, and that's where you get collectors. So in those instances, you'll start to see collectors in the purple line. So Sixth Avenue collects all of the residential traffic north and south of that area, and it collects it. And at the point is to get it from the residential area down to US 2 and up to Hayford Road. It is a collector. And it also means that there's limited access. So stop driving for a second. You're going too fast. Zoom in on the purple on Sixth Avenue. We take turns driving the car by too.
That's not good when I do it.
You'll notice that most part, all of the blocks on the south side are not facing the houses towards Sixth Avenue. They're facing the side streets. And once you get north of the first tier of lots, north of Sixth Avenue, you know, obviously all of them are facing the side street. That's the ideal, is the south side of Sixth Avenue. You don't have direct driveway access. And what does that do? When you're driving down Sixth Avenue, what is your experience?
Sucks when people are trying to back out. Yeah.
It's a conduit, like it's getting more efficient. You're getting all this volume of vehicles entering at consistent, predictable intersections onto the collector, which is going to be King, and it's going to be Beeman and Lundstrom. And then it's going to take you out to the next transmission point, right? And it can also go to a destination as well. You know, major facility. And in this case, I think it, you know, part of the goal is it will dump you out on US 2 once you turn the corner and go to Craig. So then the next level is an arterial. So what is an arterial? An arterial is an even higher classification of a transport where the idea is to go faster and further without as many disruptions in the roadway network. And that's when you begin to see even less number of driveways directly on, and you begin to see collectors coming to that road, bringing all of that local access traffic, right? That's the hierarchy of a roadway network. And there are rules around that, rules of the state of Washington, and there's even federal rules about that. So when we look at that map on our existing network system, which is on figure 21, that's our existing system. We have very few collectors. Those are Sixth Avenue, Garfield, Lawson, Russell up to Sprague, and Hayford Road,
Harlan.
and
And Craig.
McFarland down in the south. Everything else is going to be a local access street, and our only arterial is Highway 2. We are proposing to update this a little bit for a roadway network, which would be obviously part on the next image down number there, where we would be continuing the 6th, 10th, 12th. So that we've been working on this for quite a few years. So we're going to connect at Garfield and 10th Avenue, and we're going to take it all the way to the city limits. I'm showing the pointer.
I'm stopping because I'm doing too much here.
Oh, you're not. You're driving just fine.
Well, but where do you want me to go? I'm sorry.
Basically from Garfield out to the city of Spokane on 10th, 12th.
Oh. Get that all there.
So the goal is to fill in that gap, which is 10th Avenue, which will be built next year. It'll cross Hayford. It becomes 12th Avenue at that point. That's the only reason why it's called 10th, 12th.
Mhm.
And it'll continue behind the North 40 and it'll go all the way to Flint Road. So it's a joint initiative with the city of Spokane for another collector. And the goal of that is to take traffic off of US 2 and provide a way for people to get to local access points without having to go down US 2. All right, can you go back to map 22? You're doing a great job driving.
Thank you.
You are.
I have my license and everything.
You do have a certificate. We are proposing also to make 21st officially into an arterial. That would be the south side parallel route to US2. So we'll have a north side and a south side route, and eventually it'll retouch US2 on the far west side. And we're proposing to make Hayford north of US2 also into a minor arterial. South of Hayford is already a minor arterial. We're proposing to make that north.
How can it not be already? Sorry.
I just started 3 years ago.
I'm just, the traffic there is already the same as south, you know what I mean? And,
I know, we're fixing it as fast as we can.
and then this, what, 22nd,
21st,
21st?
well, McFarland's the green dotted line. You're on
McFarland's the
purple
purple.
line. The 21st is the green dotted.
green
line.
dotted line, yeah.
So I thought that was already in the works to turn that into it. Because Kevin had told me that years and years ago.
It's not officially classified. That's one of the goals is we'll get it. It is our goal, and we're designing it as an arterial. But we have to get the classification completed on it. Why does it make a difference for classifications? It shows where we're going with regards to roadway. So an arterial like that or a collector are going to be 5 lanes. They're intended to take a lot of vehicles from point A to point B. We go after funding to help build it to that standard instead of a local access street, which is 2 lanes, right? So that's why we map this out so agencies know where we're going with our roadway network and how we're trying to build it logically. Any questions about the roadway network?
When you say 5 lanes, do you mean 4 driving lanes and then like a mixed
Turn
use? Okay, okay.
Yeah. Turn lane. Okay. The goals and policies, the goal stuff you've seen before. The policy stuff is again copied over from every chapter, which we'll have to work on getting this cleaned up. Let me find one that's unique. Okay, policy 19 on page 77. So this policy is the same as has been in the previous 2020 comprehensive plan. But we've expanded it with strategies. So you've heard me talk about level of service on streets. That's actually a state definition. We adopted at a local level, and we grade intersections on an A through F system. And we can measure how much traffic will impact an intersection by understanding how much delay time it increases. What is happening in the United States is that there are now levels of service being adopted for walking and biking too, and we've not done that. So one of our strategies is that we would create and maintain levels of service for walking and biking in the future. And we would be able to use that when we look at the development to say, hey, you need more walking and biking facilities added to your project, essentially. We also are working toward updating what's called a complete street policy. So complete streets have been around for over a decade. The idea is that every time you go to redo a street or build a new street, you try and serve all the needs. So walking, biking, and vehicle. So vehicle is no longer the only consideration or the highest consideration in the street design. And by adopting complete streets, which we have an older ordinance in 2012, which we're updating hopefully by this year, we formalize how we're going to prioritize the elements of a complete street and ensure that we're doing that every time the city touches a roadway project for redevelopment. So 6th Avenue is an example of that, where we're making a complete street design on 6th Avenue. Or we build a new road, or a developer builds a new road. We say, here is the complete street, and you have to have a street of this width, and it has to have bike biking facilities, walking facilities, and vehicle, and transit in some instances. That's what it means. Other smaller strategies, including landscaping and improvements all the way to the roadway edge along US 2. I'm not sure how that happened, but at one point we clearly had that requirement and somehow it got lost. So new development is not making that edge between the street and the development part of the entire experience. It's not integrating the roadway to the front of the buildings into the uses of the property. Other policies like extending the grid system, in the last 12 months, we've had experiences where there was an intent in the past to extend the grid system of the roadway network, and it was not able to occur because of the way that the city allowed for a right of way to be preserved, and because we didn't have a strong policy. What is a grid system? Well, when you look at a roadway system, it's literally grid. Like you have predictable, relatively
Uniform.
it's more than uniform. It's convenient. Like the blocks aren't too long, they aren't too short. In order to have routes, it creates redundancy for purposes of circulation. So people can have more than one way to get to where they're going. And that redundancy serves for emergency response. That's one of the reasons why you don't want to have super long ways to get into a development, and you don't want one way in, one way out. Because if an emergency happens, people in the public safety field need to get in and get out. So it's important to have a policy, not just a strategy. So I have to talk about that, but it needs to be part of policy that you need to continue the grid system. So that means when new development occurs, we should be seeing an extension of that roadway network. We shouldn't be seeing, and you will see this on the map of the city, a street, and all of a sudden the neighboring development puts a block of houses. So that means you got to go all the way north, you got to go all the way south in order to get around that development. So that's where you don't have redundancy, you don't have consistency, you're impacting response time for public safety when you don't continue your roadway network.
Saves the developer money and they get more houses built.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that like cul-de-sacs and a lot of that stuff is the whole purpose behind, because then you can squeeze a couple more houses in and in a lot of cases.
I think it's all, true, but I think it's also a
And
purchaser preference. Like
Yeah.
I want to be in the dead end street.
Right.
Well, there's an impact to that.
Yeah.
And you can see that in other cities too, where it could be a long ways to get around dead end streets, and curvilinear streets are the same thing. So increase it. So that's just an example. Obviously, we would be keeping with these other policies about improving year-round access. Some of these, like in policy 21, we have to go in because they were too literal with our transportation consultants' comments. Using boulevards and landscaping buffers designed by section 2M for transportation, for snow storage to keep blah blah. Like all we need to know is this is actually two thoughts. One is we need landscape buffers between sidewalks and curbs to help pedestrians and bicyclists feel safer. That's an easy way to say the policy. And they double as snow storage. Awesome. Okay, we can make this a lot simpler.
Definitely need to be more comprehensible.
Definitely need to keep the language about access to STA. That is happening on every single residential, commercial, and industrial development. Is STA is asking for a walkable route of surface, like paved surface or concrete. I was looking at policy 22. Sorry, policy 21, where they're asking for a shelter or a bench, a place for transit to eventually be, if it's on a transit line, and if it's not, they are consistently asking for the developer to put in sidewalks so that you can get to you can walk to a transit facility.
Mhm.
And while sidewalks are required at the street for every development, there isn't a sidewalk required from the building. So they're walking through the parking lot, or if they're an industrial site, they're walking through storage areas or whatever. So it depends, but they are trying to encourage the idea that you're creating a safe place to walk, at least to start your travels or your journey to your transit.
That brings up a question. So in that, was it Sky? Is that Sky? Skyview. There is a bus stop there, but there's no covering, there's no bench or anything like that. And you've got kids or young kids in strollers, or moms or dads taking kids in. So they have to stand out of there. They have to stand there. No, there's no cover for the bus stop, and there's no sidewalk. Or the bus stop is like in a ditch.
The developer hasn't built the pad, and STA's commented about that, and our field inspectors followed up with them that they need to get the pad in.
Yeah, because I'm like, gee whiz, I mean, they could fall. You know, older people are walking along that. When I'm running down there, I'm like, wow, there's nothing there, particularly in the wintertime, because gosh.
Yes, STA, I haven't talked to Carl Otterstrom, their planner, and somebody got bit by a mosquito lately, but their policy is not to put a shelter at every stop. They are not even a bench, because they can't. Well, they're indicating that they are not able to afford to do that infrastructure, and they're not able to afford the maintenance of it. So only 15-minute frequency stops or more frequent are even on the list for the shelters. And that's just part of a policy of STA. And I don't know where there would be space to have a developer build it, but they have their own design.
Right.
It's not one where the developer could just direct it and then give it to STA to maintain. So that might be a strategy here that we could add in, is like, work with STA about providing shelters, seating at bus areas, and what that may entail, so that there's safe and dry space, to wait for the bus.
I think, and the reason why I bring that up, because at the church that I pastor, Restoration Church, I've been there 10 years. And so when I first got there was no covering or shelter. And so I had to call the city and say, hey, what's the deal? And there was no sidewalk either. And I said, so we've got elderly women walking up and down, what's going to be done? And they communicated to me, this was back in 2013, that it was in their 20-year plan, and they finally got it there. And so one of the things I do is, if I see trash along that place, because it sits right in front of the church's property, so we own that whole corner there, I go in and I clean up the bus stop, because I'm just being a good neighbor, and it's right there, and we do that. And then they have their people come and clean out the trash bins and kind of clean up the area. But I just kind of maintain that area there. And it's just, I think that if others would take some type of ownership as a community to keep things, then it would kind of alleviate the city from always having to do that. But you go by and check on it. But I think being a good neighbor, that's a part of that good neighbor policy or identity, is to go ahead and make sure that it's kept and people are safe and all of that.
Create and adopt a bus stop program.
Right. So, and then, I mean, the other issue is like, we've had some homeless people in the last couple of weeks kind of camping out there. I will casually stroll over there and say, hey, you realize that you can't camp out here? I said, people are coming to sit here and they're waiting for the bus, and they don't need, you urinating on the property and doing all that other stuff. So I'm going to ask you to move. They say, well, who are you? I said, I pastor the church here. And so they will kindly get up and move. And then I also provide them with resources. If you need a house or some place to stay, my wife works for Volunteers of America, and she's in charge of their housing. I said, call her. She can help get you a place to stay.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
that's what I try to do in my own little section, since our church is in Spokane, to help move them from this space to, a safer place where they can get housing. And they Volunteers of America, like Catholic Charities, they get people into homes, but the other aspect is getting them into those wraparound services that will help them
Mhm.
not be addicted to the substances that they are, and they have to participate in that.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's just being that good neighbor
Mhm.
in your community. And I've kind of adopted, all right, that's a good idea. Maybe I should talk to STA and like, look, just have these churches, because they're along those bus routes anyway.
Yeah.
Adopt the bus stop there,
That's a great idea.
so thanks, Mark.
I would say I wish it would go further than that, because with STA not providing shelter at every stop or seating facilities, I think about in the winter when, the snow comes in and then people are actually standing in the street because they can't, be off the right of way, waiting for that bus.
What I would love to see happen is south of Highway 2 bus stops just be available. You have all those industrial complexes down there. There's nowhere for anybody to go. They have to go all the way to Highway 2 to get a bus. And you don't have the infrastructure to walk up there.
Well, it's the goal of STA, I believe. If you can drive us back to the map again. Which M&Ms would you like?
I took the peanut.
I had the peanut butter ones last meeting, so we're all good.
So the goal right now, as I understand it from the STA long range plan, thank you for turning that on.
Might not be set up yet.
Okay, is the route that's gonna go down 6th Avenue, just stay where you're at. And it'll go down 6th Avenue to the east or west. And it'll turn down Craig Road. It'll come back on US 2 at Craig and US 2, and right there, where it says Lawson. My understanding is STA wants to extend that route, go down Lawson to McFarland, go east on McFarland, and then south on Hayford,
So that's gonna bring it back to the,
go hit the Amazon, and then go straight up Hayford to US 2 and make the return. That's my understanding of what they want to do with 61, which is what we're building the connection on 6th Avenue to do, is eventually make that into an employer route as part of transit.
Is beyond desperately needed. And I mean, if that second exotic metals ever got running and those Amazon facility, I don't know if the other one is, ever get staffed, I mean.
Well, they're opening the Amazon here in Airway Heights this summer. If you go down to McFarland again.
Oh, they have another Amazon that they're.
Yeah.
3 of them.
Yeah, so that's ours.
This is ours, and then they're developing here.
They built that one
it's already
already,
built.
And then the other one is.
right there.
Here, right-ish somewhere. I
Go
don't know.
up in
Here?
the triangle. Yep,
Oh, I didn't realize it was there.
I think it's already all done.
it's all done. Yeah,
I gotta go down there, bro.
I mean,
I
I
just looked. Oh, go ahead.
was gonna say it's massive and you just know the amount of people that are gonna be there, and it just, that public transportation has to be accessed, and none of those artillery roads going up Garfield or Lawson have the ability to walk to two right now. In the winter, it's insane.
Well, we're gonna pop back because we still have utilities to do.
It can't be there because it's ours, right? This,
It's the lot.
because this is the extra parking lot.
Yep.
right?
So it's the one. You're right. You're right. It's the piece right across from the old railroad line.
Okay, yeah, because that's.
Yeah. Okay, so just to wrap up on the transportation chapter. There are a bunch of pieces missing, which I'm gonna go back and talk to them about. Because we had them do a bunch of maps. So one of those maps is the missing sidewalk map, and so Zach went and mapped all the sidewalks in the city. And so we now know where all the gaps are, and so there were a bunch of maps that we sent them, which included a future sidewalk map, so we know where we're plugging in, and it's going to be a prioritized map, so we'll bring that back. We had a map showing the proposed transit route extensions, and we had a map showing the extension of our existing multimodal facility and our proposed multimodal facility. So this will talk about the extensions of the shared use path, bike and walking network that we're proposing in the city, and I did not include it in the draft.
Okay.
Yep, so those are things that we'll bring back in a more updated chapter for you to look at. Okay.
Nice.
Well, we do need it because we always are looking at, how do we prioritize our 6-year plan for infrastructure? How do we build out the network? And we have a great little network already started. Okay. Utilities. I'm gonna keep you on time, so we can get out of here at 8. Utilities is going to start on document page 89. And we have maps of our systems in here. And one of the things you can see in this first image is where we have gigantic gaps in water service. So all the open space there. Now, if you go back to east of Hayford Road, that's serviced by the city of Spokane. That will never be filled in.
Okay.
But there's other areas that we clearly, if you're looking at the southwest part of the city, that industrial, we actually have a giant mining pit there, so that kind of makes sense why there's no water. The area up north, most of the northeast area, most of that's tribe
This is mining here too.
and undeveloped. Who's that doing that? What's that box? No, I don't like your box. Go ahead. Go away. Oh, sorry, that was sewer system.
I think the maps are mislabeled. 'Cause the key is giving different information.
Yep, you're right. They're mislabeled. The bottom one is sewer system. This was a major issue in the industrial sub-area plan, which is the industrial land south of US2, that so much of this area doesn't have sewer. And it really is hindering our ability to develop that area. Probably the biggest thing that I wanted to say about the utilities section is that there was a little narrative here, which was on page 89. Now, keep in mind that the draft submitted by our water, sewer, and reclaimed water consultant was 20 pages long. And they gelled it down to 1 page, and they didn't quite capture it. So in here, it said that that our plan does not provide for the 20-year projected demands. It actually does. So what you're not seeing is some of the stuff that probably should get into this portion, not into the volume 2. And so I'm going to work with them on that. So basically for the water system, because this is a very central issue to our growth as a community, we currently receive water from the city of Spokane. And we are only limited by the amount of water that Spokane is selling us. Now, we're part of a customer base on the West Plains, stop me if you already know this, that includes obviously the remainder of portions of city of Spokane and in the West Plains area, the area that is under called a public development authority. So it's a combination of county land, city of Spokane land. It has an express directive to attract development to it. So it does include a little bit of county in there, and they need Spokane water. There's us, Medical Lake is on water for the city of Spokane. But
Did Medical Lake go when we did, or have they been on there?
they've been on there for a long time.
Okay.
Their well had hydrologic continuity to the lake, and it had a declining source. And so ecology made them get onto the city's Spokane's water system. So because there are multiple users, Spokane is looking at physical improvements to the system. So a booster station, upsizing some lines and things like that. But city of Spokane has so many water rights, they'll probably never use them ever. So we're working with them on potentially increasing the supply of that water through our 2 connections, one's in Craig Road and one's in Hayford Road. The reason that we're on the water is because Airway Heights wells were contaminated by Fairchild Air Force Base. So the new limit for having to treat was just recently lowered last month to 4 parts per trillion. Airway Heights 1,500 parts per trillion. So we've been looking at multiple options for water. So, and we may do a combination of those, and that's why we have a plan for the 20-year future of this. We can do any combination of these, increase our water supply that we're obtaining from Spokane. We could, as in addition to that, build our own well down the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Aquifer, which is over the edge of the cliff over here, which we've been pursuing funding and permission to do. We could do both. We don't have to do just one. We could supplement by putting filtration on our existing wells. City of Issaquah, I think, does that. Where you can filter out the PFOA, PFASA. It's expensive and it's expensive to maintain, but you can filter it out. So we could use a combination of those things in order to supply water. So we do have a plan. We're looking at the costs and investments in each of those. And we're required by law, by growth management, that we have to tie development to levels of service or transportation, and we have to be able to supply other services like water. So we have to go forward with those concepts, and we have to secure additional water in order to facilitate growth, or in the reverse, growth will not occur because we cannot maintain our water system, as an example. So the goal is to bring up more of this into this part of the document. We have a fairly good idea of what our growth is going to be because we hired a national professional marketing agency called Leland Consultant to do a market analysis. And it actually was done for the West Plains and then specifically for Airway Heights. So it's a fairly accurate estimation of commercial, residential, and industrial development, including tribal development that could occur. We feel pretty confident that we understand, in the near term, what that demand is going to be. Obviously, the further you get out in 20 years, you just have to readjust your plan, which we're required to do anyway. So we'll be working on that. This is probably the biggest issue out of the entire plan, is going to be how we're planning for water, going out public and with other agencies reviewing our plan. How are we addressing transportation? And that's why that roadway network piece is really important. And what are we doing about housing?
Makes sense.
Nobody cares about reclaimed water. So we have 4 capital plans, that we'll be producing for the comp plan. We're required to do what's called a 6-year capital improvement plan. So we have to say, here's our government-based infrastructure improvements we're gonna do over the next 6 years, and this is how we think we're gonna pay for it. This is how much it's gonna cost. So that'll include probably expansion of sewer treatment capacity in the next 6 years. It'll include the alternatives I just gave you for water. It'll talk about the proposed city hall, which is on the ballot measure for this fall, which is to locate a city hall over north of US2 over at Garfield, and an existing building with fire station, with services and courts. So that'll all be in that 6-year plan. And to the extent we can, we'll talk about what our 20-year, and that's going to probably talk a lot more about water and sewer at that point. We also have to do that for transportation. That's pretty easy. We adopt the 6-year transportation plan every year. As a matter of fact, it'll come to city council on Monday. And so it lines out what projects we're looking at for preservation or improvements. And then this comp plan I'll talk about again, that 20-year future. And the 20-year future is trying to build 21st Avenue, trying to make improvements on US2, trying to finish Craig Road. Those are the big expensive ones. So that is just an overview, and it also kind of reaffirms why we may not have a second meeting in July if we don't get them to be able to get those documents well in advance, so we can review them and get some of these materials added in, so we can have the remaining chapters, and we can get an updated version of this for everybody to look at. And those remaining chapters are the economic development chapter and the capital facilities chapter, which we haven't seen. Those are all required by the state law for conflict.
Do you want us to do anything with this, Heather, for the next meeting, or?
Yes, if you would be so kind, if there's something that you identify here that you think is missing, you're seeing errors, omissions, please let me have that. In the meantime, I'm going to forward them my review of the first chapters that I went through with you today, and I'm going to go through the things that I've just provided to you today in an overview of what I see is missing.
Any questions?
Oh,
Love it like always. It's great to see what we're doing in the city. So I look forward to this next 2 chapters and moving on to the final plan when it's done. All right, we'll move on to commissioner reports. Does anybody have anything?
Nope.
No? Real quick, do you guys want to do the pledge of allegiance or not? I mean, either way, I'm fine. I don't feel like I need to show you my patriotism by doing the pledge of allegiance every day, and it's not a legal requirement, right?
If it's a legal requirement, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't. As far as the agenda formats and your policies, you
Yeah.
can change your policy.
I think, yeah, because they set their own policy, they set their own agenda policy,
Right.
so I don't think it is. I mean, we can check on it for sure, but.
Well,
I don't care. I'm either or. I mean, I served in the United States Air Force, so it doesn't, I'm good. I can say it, I can not say it, but it's all good.
I personally would like to remove it just because I know, like, through Zoom, it creates a challenge.
That work for sure.
It's a little clunky.
Yeah.
Or a lot.
Okay, well, I mean, assuming that it's legal and we're allowed to on the next meeting, probably bring it up to actually put on a vote. That way we can also hear from Bill if he wants to add to that as well.
Fair enough.
I don't have anything otherwise. So if you want to move on to staff reports.
Yeah, just real quick. We're gonna do a public hearing. Andre, you weren't here last meeting, so just more for you. We have a preliminary subdivision that you are going to be reviewing. So just to give you a visual, this parcel here, and this parcel over here are looking to subdivide into 64 single family lots to be sold for single family homes. So we're working on the staff report right now, but we'll have that for next meeting.
So in the area, whatever.
Yeah, so it's two different areas. It's here, and then this parcel. So there, and there. It's called Sunrise at Hunter's Crossing because everything is Hunter's Crossing. Sorry.
So you said that's going to be on the next meeting, will be.
Yep. Yeah, so that will be July 10th or 12th. I can't remember. It should be on the
July
bottom.
12th.
Should be on the bottom there, right? Yeah.
Next meeting is July.
Yeah, so that'll be July 12th. So we are expecting the applicants to be here. And they will have an opportunity. Mark has gone through this before, but staff will give a report. We'll give our presentation, our recommendation, our analysis of what to do. The applicant will have an opportunity to present their side and what they want to do. You will essentially vote to whether to recommend the preliminary plat to the city council or not. So you're not making a decision of approval, you're making a decision of recommendation to the city council for. That's it. I don't want to go through the whole thing. Heather?
Okay. So I just looked at the Municipal Research Center, which is a library service available to municipalities, and they already did an article on it, and it's up to the discretion of the local agency whether you do the Pledge of Allegiance. Moving on, I mentioned that a postcard will be coming out. Postcard will probably go to residents north and south of 6th Avenue, and it'll be for an open house on July 13th from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Recreation Center. So the goal is to, give the map showing the design for 6th Avenue and, take comments about the project. The goal is to finish 6th all the way Craig, add transit stops along there, fill all the gaps, the sidewalk, put a continuous 10-foot wide multi-use path, which means it's legally available for biking off of the roadway along there, and to put a planted boulevard that from Russell down to Craig Road, and that construction will happen next year. So if you hear anything about it, the surveying already happened. The geotech boring was happening today down there. So if you just want to know more about it, let us know. We'll be happy to help with that. We'll also be working over on Craig Road as well. That is going to be more of a general informational because it's actually on the tribe side of Craig Road to put that multi-use path, and so eventually when power's going to have to relocate their power lines and stuff like that. It will mean, as I mentioned earlier, that it will be an alignment of the perfect storm, where Airway Heights will be able to complain that with too many roadway projects, it is difficult to get around because there are roundabouts to be built at Lyons and US2, Craig and US2, at Spoko Fuel and US2. Craig Road will have the multi-use path built along it, and 6th Avenue will be having sidewalk path, the boulevard, put down it as we move forward. So it's going to be a little difficult in the spring and summer of 2024. To get around, which is good. It's a good problem to have. We also recently just received funding for $850,000 from our regional transportation council to resurface Hayford Road south of US2 for a mile. These kind of dollars are super important to us because without money from federal and state agencies, it's just too expensive. So that will mean also probably in 2024. Possibly between 2024, we will see delays and reroutes on Hayford Road in order for that's going to be regrind and seal project, but it will preserve the roadway for a long time, for decades after we get that work done. So other than that, talking about You're the first to know about traffic delays and transit there.
Yeah, I don't want to run down the list of stuff that I just went through like 2 weeks ago. That's why I was trying to keep it short. But
Oh, development review process. So after last meeting, I did speak with city manager Albert Tripp about the concerns with regards to permit issuance and timelines. The city has been working on an improvement plan with regards to increasing transparency around permitting, identifying what resources are needed in order to improve processing time. And they did a presentation Monday this week to the city council. And one of those goals was to also push it out to stakeholders within the development community and provide more of an overview of what was occurring. So the items were that they are going to be filling a permit technician position over in Public Works. We just hired a new city engineer. We'd have a vacancy in that position for 15 months. And we'd never had a permit technician over the Public Works Department. So the goal is between those two people to pull out and back to Public Works, all the Public Works permitting, because all of that permitting is happening in the building department, and that's not allowing for essentially our building official to just focus on building permits. So that includes civil plan review, grading permits, obstruction permits, the filing of transportation control plans, all of that. The goal is to move that back over to Public Works and have them do the entry and have that done. The next goal is to hire an in-house residential plan reviewer. The city still needs to figure out how to fill a $55,000 gap to do that. But the goal is to identify some funding for that and have that position filled by the end of the year, by the end of 2023. What that would enable is for us to no longer send out residential reviews to WC3 and have that in-house.
Nice.
Let's see. So there was the plan reviewer there. The other element is to enter into a supplemental service contract with the city of Cheney. And what the city of Cheney would do is provide supplemental building inspection and to do supplemental residential plan review. So that when there's capacity at Cheney, that we would be able to move over work and have them do that review and do an inspection, so that it would be kind of like a, you know, in your sink, right? When it's overflowing, you can push some of the water down the second drain in order to improve that. So those are the kind of the moving components of the physical fixes to the system. There was identified some elements like more transparency with the permits. I'm not sure exactly what that means. The permit system that we have does have the capability of different levels of public access right now. It's set to status. So if you were to go through the city's portal and look at building permits, you could see pending as a status or issued as a status. It does have the capacity to be very, very transparent. So I'm not certain what level that they're wanting to do that at. So let me show you real quick.
fine on this issue. Really?
Go for a single family.
That's why I was trying to, and this is Highland Village, so that's why. And these, I think, are Aero traditions will have some. Fine, there.
So, it doesn't give you a lot. You can keep scrolling down, but I don't think it gives you, any of that. So, one of the things that Zach and I talked about doing was that since the permit status can't be currently viewed, what we'll start doing, because we're only one part of a review for a building permit, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial, is we'll just start sending an email to the project applicant, their representative, saying, we began our review on this date and we completed on this date. Our review is limited to zoning.
Right. Overwhelm you all though, because I know how busy you all are. So
No, I mean, I'm doing it anyway, so it's just increasing transparency. So when projects come in and they require planning review, I do the planning review, but I don't notify them that I've done my planning review if it's a building permit. So in that case, a good example is a single family home. I'm required to review a site plan to make sure it's meeting building setbacks and a couple other things like that. That takes me, if it's a good plan, 10 minutes, right? So what I can do is say, hey, we received it here, I completed it here, the planning department has completed their review. For further questions, contact the building. So it's just an update. So letting them know that it's not just sitting on a desk, other departments are looking at it as well.
Yeah, let me be clear, this is really only for single family, because we're already notifying commercial and industrial permits when our reviews are done. Because it's something that the engineer and the project managers are already aware. Just they do it, they understand that a permit's broken up into, public works review, planning review, building review, fire.
Right.
So we already send a correction letter, formal correction letter, and then we whittle down and say, okay, and everything's satisfied, we're going to approve your plan. So this is really about single family to say,
yeah,
we've done your review, we're done. But that would be another element is potentially what they may do with the permit system. There were questions about the online permitting. And that was a part of the discussed strategy on Monday about when that would be created or expanded on. I just wanted to follow up on that. I did have that conversation.
Make quite a bit of progress, and that's good to hear.
Well, that's what was reported back.
Yeah.
Those are the stated goals is essentially have two more positions filled by the end of the year, and then be able to have those entities take over part of the work.
definitely cool. Yeah, shift that burden, or not burden, but shift that work around and make it easier on that building department.
It will, but building official, he needs to leave for 2 weeks in July.
They're not gonna, like you were saying, ensuring with Cheney, because I know back, was it pre-COVID, Spokane was coming out here and doing stuff for the building department, doing inspections and stuff.
In communications with other jurisdictions, that seems to be the only one, as what I heard, that so that they have available capacity. And so I don't know how quickly that agreement, interlocal agreement can be created and executed, but this is a urgent matter. And so, I do not think that there is an alternative for 2 weeks while she's out of town.
Man, that's gonna be a lot of lost work right there.
She's not gonna work remote like she did last time.
It's not as critical.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not saying that she should.
that
but I mean,
time that wasn't as critical, and so she was working, even though that was actually her vacation. She was
Right.
working every day, and this time I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna speak for
I
her.
know, and that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the reason you have time off, but
Yeah,
you need to do it. But yeah, I remember something. They're like, oh, she's on vacation, and I got an email, and it's like, isn't she in Alaska with her parents or something?
Yep.
It's like, why is she doing this?
because there isn't any
Because there- yeah.
alternative, and that was acknowledged for the council, is, that it's a bottleneck, and, there isn't another way without providing some additional resources for projects to continue to review, or for her to continue to work when she's not in the office. So that was
They're aware,
a,
we're working on this. Yeah.
let you know about that, and what the next steps are proposed.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sorry I took you over 8.
Well, if anybody doesn't have anything else, let's adjourn this meeting at 8:06 PM.
Don't you have a gavel?